Hi everyone. It's really lovely to see so many of you here. I'm just going to change my view on my screen so I can see some more of you. Firstly, obviously, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the Friends of Heath Robinson Museum for inviting me to give this talk this morning. Being an artist and sitting at home in my little studio most of my time, it can become very sort of quite a sort of lonely profession. So being able to sort of share what I'm doing it's always like really welcome, especially with lockdown and and the fact that we're all pretty much stuck at home. So it's really lovely to see so many lovely faces this morning. I've been painting for most of my life, really, probably since I was about 5 years old, I would say. And I always kind of really knew that that's what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to be an artist, or something that allowed me to sort of draw and paint. So as Jane has already mentioned, I did my foundation in art and design at Chelsea, and then I went on to do my degree at the University of Plymouth. After I graduated, I worked as a freelance designer in London for about a year or so, mainly kind of working in the sort of for Paper Chase, doing sort of greeting cards and things like that, and then I kind of had the opportunity to sort of go out to Asia. So I went and worked in Hong Kong and Singapore for about roughly about sort of 4 years, really. And I worked in a very sort of traditional sort of Chinese design firm, where I was the only English-speaking person in the whole place. And that really was an experience. And I kind of learned Cantonese, or some Cantonese, pretty quickly. I then went on to work for Tower Records in Hong Kong, where I worked as an in-house designer. And then I moved to Singapore, and I worked for a design firm there, mainly kind of working on packaging for the Asian market. And then I came back to England and worked again as a designer in Wimbledon for about sort of 2 years before children came along. So then I kind of really took a career break for about sort of 8 years, really, and just to kind of bring the children up. So my husband and I, we have 3 children. One's at university, one's in the middle of A levels, and one is in the middle of GCSEs. So it's all kind of hands to the pump in our house at the moment. So really, when my children kind of started school, I kind of started thinking about what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life, in a sense. And I kind of knew I didn't really want to go back into the sort of design world. And throughout this time, I've always been drawing, I've always been painting, I've always kind of kept that alive. So I kind of knew that that's really kind of where I was headed. So I set a business up with my sister, and we were teaching children to draw and paint. So I was kind of really continuing that kind of passion of mine, I suppose. And then I had the opportunity to start teaching adults painting. So I've obviously been doing that now for about sort of 10, 12 years, and it's just been fantastic. I love teaching. I love my students. Some of them are here, I can see them dotted around, and I definitely miss them so much with having sort of being in lockdown. So I've been teaching for about 10 years, and really sort of in the last kind of sort of 3 years, I've kind of really decided to focus a lot more on my own painting. So I started to do a little bit less teaching, just to kind of readdress that balance, really. I guess my focus with my painting really at the moment is kind of figurative painting, really. So I really enjoy you know, I guess in a sense I'm quite a sort of people person. I love, you know, I love being around people. I love, you know, I love faces. And for me, that was just a really, you know, to be able to explore the human face is just absolutely sort of fascinating to me. And I do, a lot of my work is kind of around doing portraits and around people. So when I was invited to sort of be the artist in resident at Heath Robinson Museum, I kind of had an inkling that that's where I wanted to kind of take my work. And so I spent about a month or so in the museum, just kind of absorbing the kind of sights and the sounds of the museum, and really I got a huge sense that that the volunteers that work at the museum are, to me anyway, felt like the kind of heart and soul of the whole place. And really it kind of felt to me that, you know, the whole place really wouldn't be running if it wasn't really for the museum and all the people that volunteer their time and to give to the museum quite freely and generously. And as I kind of got talking to people, it kind of, you know, some of the stories, some of the lives that people have led, you know, the jobs they've done, the things they've done in their you know, in their lives is just amazing. For me, it was just absolutely fascinating. So that's why I kind of more or less decided that I would like to do portraits of the artists at the museum, and so, you know, I asked for people to come and sit. So far I've done about sort of 12 paintings. So some of those people are here today. Well, I can see Ruth anyway. And it's just been an absolutely sort of amazing experience, sort of being able to sort of do that, really. So kind of, I'm actually not going to share those portraits today, because hopefully there is an exhibition that will be planned where those paintings will be on show. But what I would like to share with you is some of the paintings that I've been working on. So I kind of tend to work in watercolors when I'm doing my portraits, and I work in oils as well. So both of those kind of mediums, and I don't know if any of you paint or kind of have any kind of experience with painting, but both of those are actually sort of quite challenging mediums to use, watercolor in particular. So what I'm going to do now is kind of just share with you some of the things that I've been working on recently. So some of the portraits. So you can see some, you know, that's just a real kind of snippet of some of the work that I'm doing at the moment. For me at this sort of present time, I'm kind of intrigued by oil painting mainly, and really for me it's about the kind of relationship of colours on the face. You know, one color kind of next to another, and really for me that whole process becomes quite meditative and quite sort of you know, I'm absolutely sort of focused on it. And sometimes when I kind of step away from a painting, I can sort of see, oh my gosh, I can see a face there. It actually, the whole experience sort of becomes quite abstract for me. So it's completely absorbing, and I never tire of that kind of challenge of kind of sort of trying to do a portrait, trying to sort of get that likeness, or the way the light falls, and really it's about, for me at the moment, it's really about sort of capturing that kind of moment in time, that little kind of snippet. I do kind of sometimes tend to do commissions, but generally what I've kind of said to myself, perhaps in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, is actually sort of be quite selfish and just paint for me. Sorry. Well, I was just talking about the fact that I'm looking for artist muses, basically. So people that wouldn't mind me painting them or studying them for a few weeks or months at a time. So if you know anyone that's interested, at the moment it would obviously be over a kind of Zoom situation. But if you'd like to volunteer your time, I would be really grateful if just to help me to sort of take my sort of kind of painting forward and my kind of journey forward, really. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes. So what I've really prepared this morning is a little kind of demo of a watercolor painting of one of the members, sorry, not one of the members, one of the volunteers at the museum. And somebody that you might kind of recognize once you kind of see the recording. So really it's a kind of insight into how I work, how I paint. Some of my students here will be sort of quite familiar with this. So I'm just going to kind of really share that with you, and I'm really happy to take sort of questions at the end, and kind of have a chat with you kind of individually, sorry, not individually, but as a group. So I'm once again going to share my screen, so please bear with me. Share. Okay, so let's click on that. Brilliant. Okay, so this lasts for about sort of 15 or so minutes. Hi, so I'm so pleased to be able to do this little demo and show you how some of the ways in which I work. So I'm going to do a portrait of Maureen. So some of you may know her from the museum, and this is a photograph that I took of her whilst I was working on some of the oil paintings that I've been doing of some of the volunteers. So I'm going to work from this, and I've also got a colour photo that I'm going to also work from as well. So really the first stage of doing a watercolour is actually doing the drawing, which I've actually gone ahead and done already. And the next stage really is then just to kind of start mapping out some of the kind of sort of shadow areas, the highlight areas, etc. So really sort of starting to look at the face. So I normally kind of start with a kind of very sort of pale wash of burnt sienna, which is what I'm doing. I'm mixing it up here. So I'm gonna get started. And the reason why I kind of mainly work from a black and white photo is because it just gives me all the kind of tonal areas in terms of where I need to go darker, where I need to stay lighter, especially on the face as such. And it gives me lovely shapes to work with. And once I've kind of mapped those in, I'll then start introducing kind of other colours in as well. So I'm going to start off here with this lovely shape here. So I've already sort of got a really good idea of Maureen's face because I've already done an oil painting of her. Okay, so really what I was saying, I didn't realize I'd got cut off, but I was saying I wish I actually could kind of paint as fast as this, but actually this stage for me takes you know, up to about an hour to do. You know, I really kind of do take my time with sort of choosing the colors, and kind of just kind of, you know, building up the painting and kind of really kind of feeling my way around it, really. So it does actually take me quite a while. And I also kind of what I really love about watercolors is they are slightly kind of unpredictable. So some of my students that are here this morning will vouch for me when I say that. It's kind of, you start with an intention with your painting, and you know, it can go in any direction, really. And I guess over the years what I've learned is to just go with that.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it as it is. It's very, very wet at the moment, and I've got enough colour on there in order for me to kind of, you know, kind of start getting to kind of understand what's going on with the actual kind of photograph and the painting as well, and how it's going to develop. So what I tend to do at this stage is I let it dry kind of 90%, so not completely 100% dry, but 90% dry. So at the moment it's still very wet, which means any more colour that I put on will just sort of start running. So I'll let it dry, and then we'll come back in, and before I leave it, and that as well. Okay, so I'll leave it there for now, and then we'll come back in a little while. Okay, so that's really lovely and dry, and I can start kind of now building up, you know, the kind of areas of the face. So what I like to do is kind of start with the eyes, and almost kind of work out from there, because once I know I've got those kind of locked in, it then kind of makes my life a little bit easier. So what I will do, if I can find it on my table, is, oops, sorry, dropping my brushes. What I will do is kind of drop down to a sort of slightly smaller brush. So I've got two fairly small brushes, which I can kind of work with. So let's get started on the eyes. So I'm now working from kind of like a nice colour photo. So I'm just mixing up a nice kind of blue for the eyes. Okay, so what I do is kind of work around the edge of the eye first, and then just kind of rinse my brush and just allow that colour to sort of flood in to the eye, rest of the eye, and just try and leave a nice kind of edge, and then I can kind of see the pupil there, so I'm just going to add that in. Okay, and I will also do the other eye whilst I'm doing one, I will also do the other. So this one's got a slightly lovely sort of glint I can see. So I'm going to use a slightly different blue. So once again, once I've kind of got that in, I will rinse my brush and then literally just kind of soften that edge. I'll just see if I can put the pupil in as well. I can't actually put the pupil in because it's a little bit too wet, so I'm just going to lift that out a little bit, and I can put that in a minute once that's dried off.
So really at this stage of the painting, I kind of sort of almost kind of see myself almost like a sculptor. So so with the paint, what I'm doing is kind of pushing some areas back. So for example, you know, the area around the eyes, you know, I use the color to kind of push those areas back. And I leave the areas where the light is kind of really hitting the face, so namely like the forehead, the nose, the cheeks and the chin. And so it's for me, I love this stage of the painting because I can really kind of see that person kind of beginning to kind of pop out. Yeah, it's a lovely kind of moment when you know that, you know, it's all working really well. So with Maureen, I really wanted to add quite a lot of colour into the painting because for those of you who might know her, you know, she's such a lovely sort of bright, sort of colourful person. So, you know, I really wanted to add lots of kind of colour into the actual painting as well, just to kind of capture that sort of part of her personality.
So I'm just going to stop there for a little while and let what I've done dry, and then I'll come back in and do the last layer. Okay, so I've left this to dry overnight, and I sometimes kind of do that with my paintings, just so that I can kind of have a little bit of a space between what I've done and what I kind of need to do. So it kind of helps me to kind of refocus when I go back to the painting. So for me, this is kind of 98% finished. There's just a few areas that I need to kind of work into, namely to re-look at the eyes, in particular this eye. And then just kind of reassess once I've done that, and really kind of see what else needs doing. So that's my plan of action for this kind of last layer. So really, I tend to work in 3 layers of colour. So the first layer, second layer, and third layer being where I do most of the refinement. So this is the stage that I'm at. I'm at the kind of refining stage. Which actually doesn't require a lot of work for me at this stage. Okay, so I'm going to put my paints back out again and let's get going.
So at this stage, I kind of tend to really work sort of quite instinctively with what's happened with the painting as it stands. So I kind of tend not to look so much at the photograph, but really kind of look at the painting and see, what does this painting need? Where do I need to go in order to sort of make it work, better, really. So for me, that is the kind of third stage of the painting, in a sense. So I tend to use a little bit of white gouache perhaps at the end, just to add in any highlights, in particular the eyes, maybe around the lips or kind of things like that. So that's kind of my last bit of the painting.
Okay, so I think for me that's now finished. There's not really much more I'm going to do to that. And so yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching this come together.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And yeah, so that really is, painting from the beginning to the end. And really in terms of time, that's kind of taken, about sort of 4 to 5 hours to do, although I've kind of squeezed it into 16 minutes. So I just, one last thing that I just wanted to say was that I'm also a member of Harrow Open Studios, and I tend to open up my studio once a year, and that normally happens in about sort of June time. So I'd absolutely love to see as many of you come to the studio and visit me and come and say hello and introduce yourselves. It'd be lovely. And once again, thank you so much for your time this morning.